am now recording. So I am Cheyenne with Artshare, and I am coming to you with artist Terri Lloyd, whose work was selected and hung in a show back in March and has been sealed away in Artshare's vault during the pandemic time. But we're finally launching this week. Terri, it's good to have you here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Here.
So tell me about your work and why you submitted to Garden, and then I'll share a little bit about your work.
Okay. I submitted to Garden because I liked the premise of it. And for the past couple of years, I've been working outside in my backyard, creating works that actually happen within a gardenscape, whether they're from memories of childhood or the challenge of dealing with hard philosophical topics and trying to translate that into some sort of personal story, such as with the cats and the Utopia piece. So I thought it was a good time to, see if I could pop these stories out into the world and see if they'd be accepted.
There's definitely like a psychology to your work. I notice there's definitely a story you're telling, and there's a lot of childhood memories going on there. Tell me a little bit about that.
Okay.
Or I guess let me open that up. Do you always have like a psychology or trying to tell a message in your work?
Yeah, I think I do. And I'm not sure if that has to do with my Irish background. The joke amongst family and friends is that, at some point I'm going to pop up and say, oh, I've got a story about that. I think that gets annoying, uh-oh, Auntie Terry's at it again. Don't give her any more wine. We're going to hear something horrible. But I think it goes back to just, being an artist for me is also being an observer and understanding, and observing human condition, whether it's my condition or the totality of human condition, and I think that it's important to be able to tell stories and to maybe have a little bit of a philosophy about life, and that philosophy sort of helps me understand where I am in relationship to the universe or the world or my place in society. And so I think that does come out in my works.
So I'm going to share your website because you do have quite a few series that are articulated on your website, and this one, In the Court of the Easter Queen, is what we selected most of the worst works from, or that you submitted. So in that same psychology of memories and working through or processing through memories, do you feel like a series is almost like you outlining an issue in your life and diving into it, taking a deep dive into processing it?
Sometimes, but not necessarily so. With this particular series, it came out of another body of work, and that in which the catalyst was the death of my father. And I had been working digitally and working really tight digitally for many, many years. And I realized that I needed to express these stories I wanted to tell with a looser hand. And so I spent the better part of 2 years painting with my left hand rather than my dominant right hand.
Wow.
And so I unlearned everything I had known previously and ditched it all for what we're looking at now. And in the Court of the Easter Queen series is actually me working with both hands. And now I continue to work with both hands. So when one can't do what I need it to do, the other hand steps in and finishes the story for me. It was important to me, now that both my parents are gone and I will not be grounded for the rest of my life, to go ahead and tell the stories. And in going through old family photos, there became this sort of narrative about my generation. And, I was born in 1960, so I grew up in the 60s and 70s, and we were the atomic age. We were the atomic family. I think it was my generation's parents where it was in my generation where both parents ended up going to work eventually. You know, women wanted to enter the job market, and then they had to enter the job market. And so, you know, looking back on all of this stuff, I wanted to make a body of work that wasn't necessarily about me, but was about me, that, you know, that my peers and people that were of my generation could take a look at it and relate to it and say, oh, I've lived something like that.
Yeah.
You know, oh, this is what shape does.
Well, it's interesting because the images are haunting, right? If done in a darker tone, there's some real sadness happening here. The detachment of the head, the no features. But then you add all these beautiful colors to it, and it makes it this playful, fun image. And maybe doing it with the left hand, there's this childish approach to it as well.
Yeah.
But the subject matter, there's some pain there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We were, you know, as functional as we look on the outside, there was a lot of dysfunction. And, you know, I call it functional dysfunction because in a lot of ways, we worked. We made it work. It wasn't a happy family, sadly, because our parents weren't happy. And it created a lot of loneliness for my sister and I. And there were dynamics that went on, and that I've noticed are generational dynamics, you know, sons being cherished a little bit more than daughters. Daughters were to be married off. You know, this weird patriarchy about carrying on the family name, you know,
right.
You know, it was still there in the 1960s and 1970s. And, you know, and I experienced that, and a sense of not belonging, you know, and being the artistic, creative child and the rebellious one, I never felt like I belonged. And so, you know, and maybe that's because I was weird. I don't know.
We can't retell that story, Terri.
Yeah, no, let's not go there. But you know, the reason my head is off is because they were always telling me I would lose my head if it wasn't attached.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, wow, really? And maybe it's because I spent a lot of time as a child in my head. You know, I read, I drew, I'd go outside. I was always, you know, enthralled with nature. Everything was a discovery. So there is a sense of that in there, and a sense of nostalgia, I think, as I said, that doesn't really exist.
Yeah.
You know,
but it's almost like a child's memory as well.
Yeah.
You know, the simple lines and the simple backgrounds, and you know, what we remember of those times are the pain, but also the color and the vibrance and the fun, and, you know,
exactly.
Swimming, tons of swimming. These are just so precious, and they so speak to me as you know, a child growing up in Southern California. The appearance was always beautiful, but, you know, within the walls of the family, there's always some dysfunction that we're dealing with.
I think so. And, you know, I can look back now, and, you know, the wonderful thing that has happened with this work is that I've had a transformation.
Mm-hmm.
So things that I might have been angry about or perplexed about as a young adult, or even as an older adult now, the dynamics of family relationships and all of that, there was a long time where I would have been angry about it. And now working through it, I got to be older than my mother. You know, she died very young from lung cancer.
Wow.
Big time smoker.
So sorry to hear that.
Yeah, that was kind of a drag, but it was a transformative moment too. And, you know, going through these photos, though, of her as an older woman, looking back on her as now she would be a younger woman to me, I could see exactly who she was, and I could have compassion for her, and really come to love her, and come to love the children that we were, and come to love my dad, because he wasn't there, but, you know, still love him anyway because of his influences. And so I transformed through the process of painting these.
Yeah, I feel like that transition is so necessary, because I feel like we go through something in our 20s and 30s where the blame is so huge. Let me blame them for who I've become and who I am. And something happens as we get older, thankfully, is
Yes,
that we're able to look at it in perspective and realize that our parents had us when they were children.
yeah,
And they were just learning how to be people while they were raising people. Um,
exactly.
and it,
My mom was only 20.
right?
I
Yeah,
told him that.
I know. Well, and luckily people are waiting longer to have children, so hopefully they'll be much more evolved now. that's, that's the goal. So we have only a couple minutes left. I'm going to share the catalog of the works, but is there anything else you want to share about your work or about this experience?
Um, you know, mostly for me now, where I'm at mentally, is that from the work has to transform me. It's this Tibetan sort of mentality. I follow a lot of Buddhist thought and things like this. Um, I want the work to transform me. I want to transform because of the work. I want to, I want to grow as the work grows. I want to grow. And I want to tell stories. Utopia is in the Backyard is a hilarious story about the two anarchists I live with. They both have fur, and yet they don't like each other, and yet somehow manage to make it work. And when presented with the idea of utopianism, I thought, well, where would that be? Where, okay, things are dystopic now, but where is my utopia? And it happens to be where I am and where I work, which is generally in my backyard, watching the cats and my parrots sort life out, and I think it's about presence and, and accepting each other and giving each other space, to be exactly who and what you are. And the cats seem to manage that quite well, even though they don't like each other.
I love that story. My cats love each other. It's the neighborhood cats that they hate. Well, your work can be found on our website, artshare.org. You'll be featured on an Instagram post later this month. We're also selling artwork through the Artsy website with our friends and partner Launch LA. This show garden has 16 artists in it, such a wide variety from photography to oil paint. Yours is acrylic on canvas, collage work. I mean, it's really a beautiful, cohesive show with so many different viewpoints. So I invite everyone to check it out and follow Terri Lloyd to see what happens, what Auntie Terri brings. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.